Hi friends, welcome back. Today I'll bring you a new horror stories. But before we begin, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. As usual, the stories will be told by Mr. X. So, dim your light, pull up your blanket, and let's begin the stories.
There's a shadow in my backyard, and it's learning to be me. It was 1:47 a.m. when I woke up with a start. I found it strange. I almost never wake up during the night. Normally, I sleep straight through. But now, I was staring at the little digital clock with a dry mouth. Lucy wasn't beside me in bed. For a moment, I didn't know where she was. Then I remembered. She was working the night shift at the hospital. Groggy, I crawled out of bed and made my way downstairs to the kitchen for a drink. The house was empty and silent at night, just like the neighborhood. I loved this house. It was peaceful, in a good location, only a few minutes from downtown. The neighbors were good too. Even if the houses and gardens stood close together, we never had any disputes. I was standing in the kitchen, actually thinking about organizing a barbecue party. I sipped at a glass of water, and that's when I saw it. A black silhouette, barely visible in the night's darkness, yet it stood out against it, at the back of the garden, far away near the fence. A human shape, tall, thin, its outline hardly discernible, and it just stood there, motionless, staring in through the glass doors of the terrace. A chill ran down my spine. Who the hell was standing in my yard, staring in like that? For a moment, I didn't dare move. The figure didn't either. It looked as though it wasn't even breathing. It just stared inside, stared straight at me. I felt that if I didn't act now, it would make the first move. It didn't take long for my panic to give way to anger. I grabbed the flashlight I kept in one of the kitchen drawers and stormed out onto the veranda. I flung open the glass door to the yard, aimed the beam at the figure, and thought I had lost my mind because there was no one there. There was no one there. I scanned the entire yard. It wasn't a big garden. Lucy and the kids kept it tidy, so I couldn't even claim that someone might have hidden behind a bush or in tall grass. I didn't know what to make of it. I chalked it up to my tired eyes and the fact that I'd been jolted awake in the middle of the night. I must just be exhausted. I went back inside, to the kitchen, to finish my half-empty glass of water. But as soon as I reached the counter, I saw it again. Out of the corner of my eye, a tall black figure, its outline unmistakable, standing out there in the garden exactly as before, staring inside. I swallowed hard. I didn't dare shout. Francis and Tommy were asleep upstairs, and the neighborhood was utterly silent. I kept my eyes fixed nervously on the motionless figure. This time I decided I'd go out again, but I'd chase it off, whoever it was. I wasn't about to let someone terrorize me in my own home. I stomped back toward the rear veranda door, never taking my eyes off the figure outside. I was almost at the door when I noticed something strange. The figure wasn't just standing still. Its legs moved exactly as mine did. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but when I stopped, it stopped too, perfectly in sync, as if I were looking into my own reflection, only outside, in the dark. I panicked. I paced back and forth in the kitchen. Outside, the figure did the same. It stepped as I did. At first, I really thought it was some kind of reflection, but there was something wrong about its steps, as if it were only just learning how to walk, sometimes clumsy, sometimes unsure of where to put its feet. What the hell was this thing in my yard? Why was it imitating me, and, more importantly, what did it want? I didn't know what to do. The only idea I had was to shine the flashlight at it again, but the moment I aimed the beam from inside the kitchen, there was nothing. Only the glare of the window reflected back at me. The garden was empty once more. I switched off the flashlight, and the figure was gone. Vanished. Not even a silhouette at the far edge of the yard. It was as if it had seeped away into the darkness. For minutes, I stood frozen, terrified that it hadn't truly gone, only hidden somewhere I couldn't see. I must have stayed there half an hour, staring out through the kitchen window. I looked everywhere, but the figure was nowhere to be found. Since it was early Thursday morning and I had to work the next day, I I eventually went back upstairs. I checked on the boys. They were both sound asleep. From the bedroom window, I kept watch over the backyard for a while longer, but the figure never returned. In the end, I drifted off to sleep, though every nerve in me dreaded waking to find it there again. All day, the night before, kept creeping back into my thoughts. Why had I woken up so startled? Who or what had been in my backyard? I told Lucy about it in the afternoon, but she thought I was joking. She insisted I must have been tired. Maybe it was some kind of sleep paralysis, but deep down, I knew it was something else. Night came again. Lucy had to work early the next morning, so she had already gone to bed. I couldn't rest. The kids were asleep, and I stood in the kitchen, just watching. Sometime around midnight, I dozed off on the couch. I woke stiff and sore. The house was dark, lit only by the glow of the television. Groggy, I stumbled into the kitchen for a drink of water. That was when I remembered why I'd stayed up so late in the first place. It was there again. In the yard. The black, human-shaped shadow, watching. Suspicious. I stared back at it. I pressed closer to the window, trying to make out what it was, but it didn't move, just stood there, tall and thin, a black silhouette. Then an idea flashed in my mind. I rushed to grab my phone from the couch and sprinted back to the kitchen. I snapped a picture, but in the night's darkness, hardly anything showed. Maybe there was a figure on the screen, or maybe it was just some artifact of the grainy shot. But as I held up my phone and took photos of the shadow, it began copying me, clumsily, as if it didn't really have proper fingers. It lifted its arm, but the wrist bent wrong, the fingers more like long, brittle sticks. It pretended to take a picture too, though its hand moved in a way that looked like it might snap in half. I stared out the kitchen window again, nerves tight as wire. The black figure didn't move, it just kept watching our windows. Then, suddenly, it began to shift. But this time, it wasn't mimicking me. It moved as if it were searching for someone, glancing around in those jerky, clumsy motions. What the hell was it doing? Then, just as suddenly, it froze again. "Gordon, what are you doing?" Lucy's voice whispered behind me. My heart nearly gave out. I hadn't even noticed her. I'd been completely consumed, lost in watching the figure in the yard. "What?" I stammered, startled. "What are you doing, Gordon?" she hissed irritably. "It's 3 a.m. and you're standing here, staring out the kitchen window. What the hell are you doing? Come, look," I said quickly, almost excited. Lucy walked over beside me. She had been heading for the coffee machine anyway, but at least now she peered out the window into the dark. At first, she just rolled her eyes, but the moment she saw it, the color drained from her face. She stepped back, as if the glass could no longer protect her from the night. I could tell. She saw it too. The figure in our backyard terrified her as much as it did me. "What the fuck is that, Gordon?" she whispered, panic creeping into her voice. I just shook my head. I didn't know what we were looking at. Was it even human? Or was it something else entirely, something not of this world? "Gordon, call the police," Lucy said, pale as a ghost. "And what am I supposed to tell them, Lucy?" I snapped back nervously. "That there's a shadow in my backyard?" She glared at me, furious now. I knew that look, if I pushed her further, she'd be far scarier than the thing standing outside. Lucy was the one who finally called the police. She didn't give me much time to react, but I understood she was nervous and scared. Meanwhile, I kept my eyes fixed on the figure while Lucy spoke on the phone. The black shadow didn't move, or rather, it just copied Lucy as she talked. As I watched, I noticed it was getting better at it, mimicking her gestures more smoothly, almost naturally. "In a few minutes, they'll be here." "What is that thing doing?" Lucy whispered, stepping up beside me. "It's copying you," I said flatly. "While you were on the phone. Now, it's just staring. This thing gives me chills, Gordon," Lucy said, gripping my arm. "I feel so damn unsafe, and I'm scared for the kids. The boys are fine, I answered calmly. I already checked on them. We didn't move from the kitchen window. We just stood there, staring out, until Lucy finally noticed the flash of police headlights outside our house. 2 officers arrived. Lucy went upstairs to the kids, and I only looked away from the shadow long enough to let them in. But when we returned to the kitchen, it was gone. The yard was dark and empty. The officers searched the whole garden, even took a quick look through the house, but they didn't find anything. We didn't tell them exactly what we had seen truthfully. We didn't know ourselves. I just said that someone had been standing in the yard, and we had no idea who it was. The whole police matter went nowhere. Lucy eventually left for work. I managed to get a little sleep after the officers were gone. They had promised to patrol the neighborhood and check in on our house from time to time. The black figure didn't return, but it took me a long time to fall asleep again. This had been the second time I'd seen it, and the second time it had simply vanished. My Friday went by quickly. I dropped the kids off at school, and since it was Friday, I only had a short day at the office. But when I got home, I was in for a surprise. Lucy was sitting in the living room, all our things packed up for the 4 of us. She said she wasn't staying here any longer. We should all go to her parents'. But I didn't want to leave our house. It was ours, our home. I wasn't going to throw it away because of some shadow I was made of. Tougher stuff than that. We argued for a while, and in the end, she and the kids went to her parents for the weekend, while I stayed behind to settle this shadow business once and for all. The first thing I did was get a camera. I set up a night vision camera outside, aimed directly at the spot where the shadow usually appeared. My second step was buying a gas pistol. I was sure tonight would be the end of these scare tactics. By evening, I had locked myself in the bedroom. I watched the garden camera feed from my laptop, running on pure caffeine to make sure I'd stay awake until the shadow finally showed up. I must have dozed off. When I woke up, it was well past midnight. My laptop had already locked itself. Panicked, I unlocked it and switched to the garden camera. The feed showed nothing. The yard was completely empty. But when I turned the volume up to hear the audio, I caught something. Was it seen here yesterday too? A man's voice asked. Then came only garbled noises, like someone trying to speak, but unable to form words. I knew it was the shadow. I grabbed the pistol and, like someone who didn't know fear, stomped down to the kitchen. It was there again, standing in the garden. The whole thing was baffling. On the camera, nothing showed, but in person, it stood right there. I yanked open the veranda door and aimed the gas pistol at the shadow. "Get the hell out of here, you bastard!" I yelled. It didn't move. Instead, with strange, twisted, sluggish gestures, it mimed aiming something back at me, though its hands were empty. In my fury, I pulled the trigger. The pistol went off with a loud pop, and the round struck the garden fence. It passed straight through the figure, as if it truly were nothing but shadow. I stood there, slack-jawed. How could I ever have thought a gas pistol would stop this thing? As I lowered my weapon, it lowered its hands too. I just stood in the veranda doorway, staring into the dark at the tall black silhouette that could never be fully made out. "What the hell are you?" I whispered, almost only to myself. "Gordon, what are you doing?" Lucy's voice spoke. But Lucy wasn't there. She hadn't come home to check on me. The voice came from outside from the garden, where the figure stood. Goosebumps covered me, my legs trembling. "Sir, I'm afraid we didn't find anything." Another voice followed, this time a man's. It was the policeman's voice from last night. Ice flooded my veins. What the hell was this thing in my garden? We'd lived here 7 years. Why now? Why here? And that was the moment my courage gave out completely. "What should I tell them, Lucy?" came my own voice from the garden. And the instant it spoke those words, the shadow bolted straight at me. It sprinted like a professional runner. Terrified, I dashed back into the kitchen, snatched the car keys from the nightstand, and ran out the front door. Behind me, I heard pounding footsteps gaining on me, and over, my own voice repeating, "What should I tell them, Lucy?" I flew out of the house, straight to my car. I jumped in, fumbling with the ignition, and then I saw it. A black figure standing in the open doorway of the house. It was so tall, it nearly reached the top of the frame. It didn't chase me, it only stood there, staring. As I pulled away in the car, I caught one last glimpse of it in the rearview mirror, raising a hand to wave goodbye. First stiff and jerky, as if it couldn't move its arms properly. Then suddenly smooth, like the wave of an old friend.